Christianity, what instantly comes to your mind? Do you think of people spreading their love, worshiping their God, and praying? Or do you think of people shaming and protesting against people just because of their race or sexuality? Whatever you think of, let me tell you this. Christianity is a double-sided religion. To understand more about what I mean, we'll go on and talk about some main points. First off, we'll talk about some history and Bible verses. Next, we'll talk about some politics. And lastly, we'll talk about my personal story along with another person's personal story too. Before we get on to some main points, we have to acknowledge the other side and understand that they may believe that Christianity is not a double-sided religion because Christians may act and think all the same. However, that is not the case, and you'll see it as we continue on. When it comes to Christianity, there's a lot of arguments when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community and whether they support it or not. When referring to the LGBTQ plus community, they bring up homosexuality in the Bible and how the Bible's against it. However, they really shouldn't talk about it, and that is because the term did not exist in the Bible because it is a modern term and did not exist during biblical times. In fact, it wasn't created until 1869 in Germany, according to the HuffPost.com. It was coined by Carl Kettberry, who coined the terms homosexuality and heterosexuality in his first booklet on gay rights. Now that we've talked about some history, let's talk about the Bible verses that are used against homosexuality. They include Genesis 19, Leviticus 18, Romans 1, the first of Corinthians 6, the first of Timothy 1, Matthew 19, and Deuteronomy 22. Let's talk about Leviticus 18:22. It states, "Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable." When looking at this line, Christians may believe that it is used against homosexuality, but if we look further, we can realize that it's actually talking about incest and not homosexuality at all. So many verses like this one are used against it when really they shouldn't be. Next, we have politics, and that is a huge argument in Christianity. When you look at the news, it really just speaks for itself. According to yesmagazine.org, white evangelical Christians make up the driving force of America's right wing, with 80% voting for Trump and 70% still approving of the job that he's doing. When you look at the statistics, it really just makes it seem like there's just right-wing Christians. However, there are liberal Christians as well, and they are the leading force of some of America's most dominant movements. According to that same article, they are the driving force in topics such as environmental action, LGBTQ plus rights, women's reproductive rights, immigration, racial equity, wealth disparity, and affordable housing. So when you really look at it, there's politics, but there's also protesting as well. And the main topics are abortion and LGBTQ plus rights. When we look at the side against abortion, Christians may use signs that say, "Pray to end abortion," or even, "God died for your sins. You do not have to murder your baby just to cover it up." For Christians who may support LGBTQ plus rights, they carry signs that say, "I'm sorry. We're here to apologize for the ways that Christians have gone against the LGBTQ community." So when you really just look at it, protesting and politics are not something that Christians all agree on. Now, how does this all relate back to me? Well, to start off, I'm Christian, Lutheran to be exact. I was baptized as a child, and although I don't go to church a lot, I still try and read the Bible when I can. Another thing about me is that I'm bisexual, and for the longest time, I questioned that. How can I be both bisexual and Christian? Is that even possible? I asked myself so many questions, but the one that I asked the most was, will God still love me? He created me, and although I've come out, that doesn't change a thing. He still loves me. But I'm not the only person who questioned if they could be both Christian and not heterosexual. For example, Peter Volk shared his story on equipyourcommunity.org about how he grew up as Christian and gay. He talked about his struggle growing up and how he prayed that God would change him and that he was terrified if anyone would find out. Luckily for him, he had a supportive family who supported him so much as he came out in high school, but college was another story. He went to a Christian college, and they were not as forgiving. When he tried applying for the campus ministry, the university told him not to do that or apply for any other universities. The only reason being, we don't know what to do with you and your attractions. Through all those hardships, he prevailed and shares this. Most of all, I'm grateful for the purpose and meaning God has given me through my sexuality. I can't imagine how I would have come to know God's love for me, of all people, and in particular those on the margins, if I weren't gay. To wrap up, you can clearly see that Christianity is a double-sided religion, but let's review some of our main points. First, we talked about the history and some Bible verses. Next, we talked about politics. And lastly, I shared my personal story along with Peter Volk's. Now, to wrap it all up, I'd like to share with you Psalms 136:26. Give thanks to the God of heaven, his love endures forever.